If you're anything like me, then you grew up with a horrible misunderstanding of what yoga actually is. And I'm here to give it to y'all straight. Now that I've traveled all around the world and studied under yoga masters I never could have dreamed of meeting, I've made it my life's mission to translate that ancient yoga wisdom into modern tools for transformation that my chronically online generation can understand and benefit from. In other words, my job is making your inner revolution irresistible. So peace and love, welcome back to another moment of stillness. My name is Etai Atula, and today we're breaking down the four main paths of yoga. That is Kriya Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga. Before we get into it, just a little life update for y'all. If you've been listening to the past few transmissions, then you already know that I'm in the middle of no place like Om, Europe's biggest yoga tour. I'm traveling all around Europe in partnership with Europe's famous hostels and Interrail to bring free yoga classes to the people who need them most all around Europe. And I'd love to see you at one of the classes. We're just getting started. As you can see by the Shard building behind me in the video, I'm back in London after spending a lovely few days in Edinburgh, Scotland. Let me just tell you, I love Scotland. Something about being around all that old world architecture makes me feel all the friendly ghosts around. There's a long history of spiritual tradition, of witchcraft, of divergent thought in that specific part of the British Isles, and I loved being around it. I taught the most amazing yoga class there and met so many beautiful Scottish angels that generously spent their time to come to the free class. And that experience reminded me how the whole purpose of this tour, the whole purpose of this life is connection. Connection with other people, connection with the self, connection with nature, connection with the higher power. Speaking of connection, that's what we're here to talk about today, because I don't know what you thought yoga means, but the original definition of yoga is connection, union. That means that everything that we think of as yoga comes from a specific set of practices that we use to get closer to a higher power, get closer to this understanding of interbeing between all things. And before I break down the four different paths of yoga that will probably shift your perspective of what yoga even can be, let me tell you how I grew up interacting with yoga, what I thought it was as a child. I mean, to put it simply, I just thought it was stretching. Roll out your mat, do a little exercise, no different than Pilates or calisthenics, just something aesthetic. You know, the aesthetics of yoga and Western capitalism really distort the tradition of yoga. And I'm from New York City, so I learned about everything through the lens of capitalism, through the lens of consumerism. It wasn't until I actually started practicing yoga myself, mind you, at a studio that was a power yoga studio. They didn't talk about breath, they didn't talk about meditation, they definitely didn't talk about union or any of the tradition in the Indian subcontinent. But I noticed just by doing the postures, the asanas, which were thankfully according to tradition, certain things in my body started to change. I had less acne, I had less digestive problems, I had less anxiety even. My thoughts changed. And I realized, hold up, there's more to this. Suddenly I started changing the foods that I ate just intuitively. I started having better control over my emotions. And I thought, whoa, what is going on? I was genuinely confused because it kind of was challenging my notion of what yoga was. The effects I was feeling were beyond the scope of what I expected. And that led me to the internet, where I realized, okay, there's something more here. But I didn't really know until I went to Nepal to do my yoga teacher training. That popped my bubble and changed my life forever. It's something I've talked about many times during these transmissions. But coming from New York City, being in Nepal blew my mind because it's a place with no crime. I mean, at least way less crime than in New York. It's a place where everyone's really hospitable and friendly and nice to each other. A place that's connected to nature, that's really connected to religion. And I realized there are other ways to live life. The cherry on top of that whole experience was that I was training at Kriya Yoga school, getting my 200-hour yoga teacher certification, with some amazing teachers who knew a whole lot. Teachers that came from Nepal and India, who grew up a lot closer to the tradition than what I experienced in New York. And there I learned that key phrase, yoga equals union. I learned about one of the oldest sacred yoga texts, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, where he outlines the eightfold paths of Ashtanga Yoga. Ashta meaning 8, Anga meaning limbs. I won't go through all 8 limbs, I'll save that for another video, but all you gotta know is that asana, which includes any type of stretching you do with your body, any type of movement you do with your body, any type of shape you make by contorting your limbs, that's the third limb out of 8. Which means that these poses, these stretches are nowhere near the end goal of yoga. The last limb is samadhi, which is a very elusive concept. It can't really be translated from Sanskrit to English. But you can think of it as this recognition that everything is connected. You could say that is the goal of yoga. That understanding of divine order, of expanded consciousness, beyond this physical body, is what completely turned my life upside down. Got me sober, turned me into a full-time traveler, turned me into an entrepreneur, turned me into someone who spends all my time helping other people. I no longer have panic attacks. I no longer have a short temper. I no longer throw up at the drop of a hat like I used to as a kid. I can digest much more easily. I mean, I could go on and on. I don't want to bore y'all, but usually we approach yoga with wanting to lose weight, with wanting to get rid of our back pain. But we realize as we go down the limbs of yoga that was never the point. That those little symptoms are so itty-bitty in comparison to the larger goal. But at the same time, once you taste that larger goal, all those little symptoms we were so worried about just somehow fall into place very effortlessly. And it's mind-blowing witnessing that firsthand in your own body. So how do we achieve this union? That brings us to the four main paths of yoga today. This is just one school of thought. Everyone will tell you something slightly different. This is based on the various yoga teacher trainings I've done across Nepal Nepal and India. I was at the Isha Yoga Center with Sadhguru. I was in Mysore studying traditional Ashtanga Vinyasa with Saraswati Joyce, daughter of Patabi Joyce. I was in Rishikesh at the Adi Yoga Ashram. I was at the Mahakumbha Mela in Prayagraj. And I already told you all about Pokhara Yoga School. All these amazing teachers told me wildly different, but always wise things. But the common thread was these 4 methods to practice yoga: Kriya Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. Let me go through each of these and let you know what they really mean. Starting with Kriya Yoga, which is probably the one that we recognize most. The definition of Kriya in Sanskrit is like internal action. In other words, Kriya Yoga is using your body as an instrument to raise your vibration, to connect with a higher power, to realize consciousness outside of this physical body. It's just like oiling up a machine to get it to run a little bit better than we even thought it could. So Kriya Yoga includes stretching, asana, pranayama, also known as breath work. It includes exercise. It includes yoga nidra guided meditation, where we scan our body. It includes various kriyas using tools like Trataka Kriya, which is candle gazing meditation, or Neti Kriya, which is done with a neti pot, flushing our sinuses with salt water. The underlying point of Kriya Yoga is that by getting all the toxins out of your body, by getting your body to operate very highly without illness, without tension, a yogi begins to realize that they are more than their body, that their consciousness can come and go freely. And in that way, the separate self dissolves. The image that you ends at the borders of your body no longer makes sense. And that's how Kriya Yoga leads to union. The interesting thing about Kriya Yoga, and why we think of it as all of yoga, is because it has this power to work off the karma of several lifetimes, if it's done with a lot of devotion. That's why a lot of sadhus or monks will become complete renunciates and devote themselves to Kriya Yoga. Because the goal there is to work through lifetimes and lifetimes of karma, to end a reincarnation cycle and achieve Mahasamadhi, or the ability to leave Earth whenever you want. So in a way, it's kind of a shortcut to leave this physical plane, go into an astral plane, and eventually a causal plane. So even Kriya Yoga, which we think we know goes a lot deeper than just stretching your mat to feel good and relax your body. There's a whole metaphysical theory behind it. And I urge you to think about that next time you're stretching, next time you're doing breath work. How does this connect you with something outside yourself, something outside this physical world even? Moving on, let's talk about Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is a personal favorite of mine. Bhakti Yoga is also known as the yoga of devotion. You can practice Bhakti Yoga in any way that expresses your unconditional love for the divine. One of my favorite paths of Bhakti Yoga is Kirtan. This type of music where you chant and invoke the name of Hindu deities in order to embody them, in order to praise them for being perfect, and in order to boost the love in your heart. Some other common ways to practice bhakti include puja, which is a very common thing in India and in Hinduism, which, to put very simply, resembles praying at the altar, worshipping a statue of a deity or a photo of a deity, giving some kind of offering, things like that. Taking time out of your day to form a ritual out of offering gratitude, out of offering surrender. Bhakti can also be a love poem. Bhakti can also be just talking to yourself and imagining a higher power within you. I think Bhakti Yoga is so powerful because it is the yoga of love, and love has such powerful physiological effects on our body. Namely the hormone oxytocin, which we call the hormone of love and connection. Oxytocin is secreted whenever we hug a tree, whenever we pet an animal, whenever we get a compliment, whenever we get a gift, whenever we're dancing in a crowd with a bunch of people, whenever we're feeling connection, basically. And not only does it release stress and anxiety, does it improve your mood, does it regulate your nervous system? It actually also reduces pain. It heals wounds faster, and it lessens any aches that you might be feeling. That is the power of Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion, because it leads to this love, this oxytocin. And it's not something you need to be flexible for. All you need to practice Bhakti is a heart, and we all got a heart. If you're interested in Bhakti and want to know more about it, I suggest listening to Krishna Das. He's an amazing kirtan musician, and every time I listen to him, he just expresses what words cannot. His songs embody the feeling of devotion, of love, that words fail to express. And of course they should fail, because the divine is perfect, humans are imperfect. So that type of music, that type of prayer, that type of expression of unconditional love is our way of reaching towards divine perfection and trying to get just a morsel of it, just a crumb of it, just a taste of it to experience for ourselves. Next up, we got Karma Yoga, which is one of the paths that I resonate with most. Karma Yoga can be defined as the yoga of action, the yoga of selfless service to the world around you with no desire for the outcome, just for fun. It can look like passing out food to people who need it. It can look like giving a gift to a loved one. It can look like donating money to somebody who needs it. It can look like just giving someone a compliment. It can look like planting trees in your free time. You get the point. There's so many examples of this selfless service. We can even use the word charity, philanthropy, public service, volunteering to describe what encompasses Karma Yoga. And that means that no matter who you are, you have no excuse to exempt yourself from Karma Yoga. We're all capable of it because it can look different for everyone. The Karma Yoga that I enjoy most is teaching these free yoga classes, is sharing this wisdom online. But I also grew up cooking meals on Thanksgiving for people who couldn't afford turkey dinners. I grew up with a community service requirement in my high school that taught me the importance and the value of volunteer work. Because once again, yoga means connection. And we live here in the physical world. The language of the physical world is action. What better way to express connection in the physical world than to take actions to get closer to the people around you? That's the beauty of Karma Yoga. That is the simplest and most accessible form of yoga that nobody thinks of as yoga, but it's probably the most powerful, because doing things for other people simultaneously makes you feel so good and dissolves your ego at the same time. It decreases this limiting self-importance that sometimes hinders us, and it of course makes the world a better place. But I hope what I just explained shows you that you don't just have to do it in order to appear virtuous. It can actually be a very selfish thing, meaning it makes you feel very good to practice karma yoga. Our problems begin to shrink, and our heart begins to expand when we practice karma yoga. Finally, we have Jnana Yoga, also known as the yoga of thought, the yoga of intellect, the yoga of studying. Jnana Yoga is as simple as pondering these questions of who am I? What is life? What is the universe? What is this world made of? Where will we go after we die? Basically, every philosopher you ever had to read in school was a Jnana Yogi. The path of the Jnana Yogi is reading books, studying under teachers, sharpening their brain, heightening their intellect, in order to understand the true nature of what is. It's perfect for overthinkers, for people who tend to live in their heads more than their bodies, because it can rewrite our beliefs, and beliefs inform actions. So if somebody comes into Jnana Yoga as a complete materialist, thinking, oh, my consciousness just lives inside my body, inside my brain, then through the reading of traditional yoga texts, through the studying under a guru, through the mere thought process of wondering what life really is, asking all this existential stuff, beliefs will naturally be rewritten, ingrained truths will be challenged, and connection will emerge. Empathy will emerge. I'm 23 years old, and I know a lot of people in my generation could really use Jnana Yoga, because we're all kind of existentially confused about what is the meaning of life, what is the purpose of being alive. We see a lot of systems that served our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation starting to fail us, and we struggle to find motivation to carry forward. Another thing that characterizes my generation is being chronically online, having a complete excess of information. Information is a very powerful thing, and not all information is created equal. If you're listening to this and you do consume a lot of information online, as you are doing right now, thank you very much for giving me your attention. I challenge you to replace the algorithmic content being fed to you with intuitively, autonomously chosen teachings that can expand the intellect. This can look like documentaries about science, lectures by professors, books by philosophers, anything that you feel will improve your understanding of the world and of yourself. Knowledge is power, and that is the currency of Jnana Yoga. Through that knowledge, we begin to connect not only all the dots between different pieces of information we receive throughout our lives, but we connect ourselves to what we have in common with other people, to how communities work, how societies work, anthropologically how the world works, and eventually it leads to an understanding of oneness, just like Kriya Yoga does, just like Bhakti Yoga does, just like Karma Yoga does. And so now knowing these 4 different branches of yoga, we begin to understand that yoga is far more than what we thought it was. The possibilities within yoga are limitless, and yoga can be defined as anything that brings you closer to that feeling of connection, of union, the dissolving of the separate self, the surrender into the oneness of creation. Thank you for taking the time to be here with me today to absorb this transmission. I love you dearly, and I want you to know that you are perfect. You are so admirable. I commend you for prioritizing your well-being, your expansion. You being here means that you are making this world a better place. You are currently part of the movement that is changing the world as we know it. Let's dream together of a world where everybody practices yoga. What would that world look like? Let me know in the comments below. Be as idealist and delusional as you can. What would a world in which everybody is a yogi look like? What would happen to war? What would happen to hunger? What would happen to road rage? What would happen to the price of gasoline? By imagining that future together, we are one step towards actually living it. So let me know what that looks like for you. I look forward to hearing from you. I love you dearly, and I'll catch you next time. This has been No Place Like Om, live from London. Thank you for participating in this moment of stillness. Peace and love.